Once again, it is Sonic time. I know a solid percentage of my videos involve Sonic at this point, and I swear I can't help it. Sonic is some, infectious brainworm, I guess, that I just can't seem to kill for the life of me. So yeah, a new Sonic game came out, and I played it, and I have opinions. When do I not have opinions? This video will sort of be a pseudo follow-up to my Sonic Heroes video, kinda. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it if you can. I'll be referring to what I talked about in that video quite a bit, probably. A few weeks ago, a trailer dropped for Sonic Dream Team, and I was immediately pretty intrigued, actually. Not only did the setting have a really unique look to it, but it was more or less a fully 3D-looking Sonic platformer with quite a few playable characters, including Cream the Rabbit. Yeah, I was sold on this regardless. I love that stupid bunny. The way it looked like it played felt more akin to something like Sonic Adventure or Heroes, compared to something like Forces or Generations, I guess, which was really surprising to me. The 2D animated intro looked really nice too. It just got me very decently high. Wait, does that say it's Apple Arcade exclusive? Well, never mind, I guess. Yep, they announced this was only coming out for Apple Arcade. I will get into how I feel about that aspect a little later, but the short of it is Apple Arcade is basically like a Netflix service, but for app games on Apple devices. So needless to say, it was a huge deflator for me. I am a cool kid with an Android phone, so I wouldn't even be able to attempt to play this unless it was ported to another platform. But it being promoted on Apple's Twitter makes it pretty obvious that it was at least partially funded by Apple themselves, with an exclusivity deal in the mix, I'm sure. So there was a good chance I might never play this game. Plus, being a mobile-focused game completely changed my expectations. Was this going to have microtransactions? Some Battle Pass bullshit? Was it going to only be compatible with my stubby little fingers? The mobile game scene is a completely different beast when it comes to game design, and usually not in my personal taste's favor. And I think it's safe to say I wasn't alone, because I heard very, 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 very little about this game when it dropped. Even from the Sonic hyperfans I follow. Intentionally or not, it just kind of flew under everyone's radar. And maybe it was just because of that stupid bunny girl, but I still really kind of wanted to play it, or at least try it. God, Oh, wait. My girlfriend has an iPad for drawing. I didn't even think about that. And she apparently already has Apple Arcade to play some Hello Kitty game. Oh, are you kidding? Am I actually going to be able to play this game? And yeah, I did. And I beat it in a few sittings. Oh yeah, and you probably want to know how I felt about it, huh? This game has me super conflicted. It is easily one of the best 3D Sonic games I've ever played, and a lot of aspects of the game are things I've wanted to see the series do for decades now. But at the same time, it was extremely disappointing on multiple levels. Calling this game a mixed bag isn't really even apt. It's just a strange feeling experience. It's hard to love or hate, I think. I don't know, I feel like it'll be easier to explain once you know how I feel about 3D Sonic as a whole. So I talked about this quite a bit in my Sonic Heroes video, but I loved Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 growing up. And even as a big old grown-up, I still think those games hold up mechanically at least. Sonic and Sonic Adventure 1 feels really good to move around with. You have a ton of control, and even clever ways to unconstrain yourself to the game's level design. Everything kinda just felt right in that game in my opinion. The levels themselves could be weird sometimes, but moving around as Sonic never felt like it was an issue. SA2 is a bit different. I still think it's really solid mechanically, but has a lot less freedom with its movement. This game omitted the big open levels, and Sonic and Shadow mainly had go really fast from A to B style levels, which was satisfying, but because of that, the movement had to be tweaked a bit. No more crazy spin dash jumps and sequence breaking, just really fun, fluid ways to optimize your movement. The nuance of both of these games are what made them so good. So Sonic Heroes came out and kind of fucked up both ends. There wasn't any clever way to optimize your movement like in SA2, and definitely didn't want you to freely sequence break like in SA1. It was much more, for lack of a better term, brainless level design. And something that's so frustrating about that game, and I honestly don't even think I mentioned this in the video, is that the structure of Heroes felt like such a clever return to form, giving us more or less the 2D Sonic experience in 3D, while, of course, fumbling that ball so fucking hard as well. It didn't really have differing paths depending on how well you were doing like the 2D games, even though that level up system was literally the perfect opportunity for that, just saying. It has a ton of repeat bosses, and the levels themselves were padded out with enemy fodder and gimmicky roadblocks that require you to stop and switch characters constantly. And honestly, that whole padding the game thing is just kind of a reoccurring problem with 3D Sonic as a whole. Regardless of the game, they can never really fully commit to the 3D platforming level design, and this kind of always felt like it was due to the speed of the game. 3D Sonic levels, by nature, need to be really big. You're moving pretty damn fast, meaning you will be zooming through these places. Whether it's budget or time or whatever, a 3D Sonic game probably can't justify having the entire game be high-speed 3D linear levels. The game would end up being like a few hours tops. So we get the mech stages, we get the enemy gauntlet elevators, we get the fucking werehog. This helps pad out the runtime for sure, but it really doesn't help these Sonic games feel confident in its 3D level design. And even games that hype themselves up as fully 3D Sonic games like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations are actually like 80% janky 2D platforming with some 3D speed sections acting more or less as transitions between those 2D sections. Plus, the boost formula in those games didn't really encourage platforming in those 3D sections at all. It was way too fast and felt more like a reaction-based auto-runner than an actual 3D platformer. I don't have any opinions about Sonic Frontiers because I really haven't played it, but for the hour I played it before I returned it on Steam, it also kind of felt like shit, so that's all I'm going to say. This constant fight against 3D Sonic platforming that I enjoyed so much was so frustrating and is one of the biggest reasons I really haven't jived with a 3D Sonic game since like SA2. I always thought if they could just make a no bullshit 3D Sonic game with fast movement and satisfying levels to accommodate it, I wouldn't even care if the game was only like 3 hours long. Oh hey, Sonic Dream Team. Yeah, this is, more or less, exactly what I wanted. A fast-paced, well-structured 3D platforming Sonic game. The movement itself has a bit of the freedom of SA1's movement and the momentum fluidity of SA2's movement, while making sure the level design accommodates the boosting, and that boost itself not being too ball-bustingly fast. The levels aren't exactly long, but they do feel satisfying to beat, and even have a bunch of differing paths leading to collectibles and faster routes just like the 2D games. All these elements I've been dreaming of in a 3D Sonic game for years. Kind of weirdly insane. I remember it took a bit to really process that while I was playing it, but I was taken back by how solid this formula they had was. It's almost, dare I say, perfect for 3D Sonic. So like I said earlier, you have quite a few characters to choose from in this game, but it honestly just boils down to like 3 characters. A Sonic type, a Tails type, and a Knuckles type, and then the girl counterparts to each of them. You unlock them as you go through the game, but they function pretty much exactly as you expect. Sonic and Amy are very fast and can do a ring dash and have this little air dash thing to keep their speed up. Tails and Cream can fly, and Knuckles and Rouge can glide and climb very specific surfaces. Each stage have a bunch of different objectives, the first always being beat the stage and collect the red rings while you do that, and these are always the best ones. The stages are really snappy and satisfying to beat. Finding the red rings, while a little easy, is still a fun way to pay attention to the differing little paths each level has. They even throw 30 little blue ring things to find around each stage, which are usually really off the beaten path, sometimes hidden in places only accessible with certain characters, etc. The game actually lets you switch characters during the stage, and exiting the stage keeps whatever collectibles you found. This is a really simple way of not falling into that trap of making your players basically have to replay the entire game a few times to find all the collectibles, something I really can't stand with linear platformers that have collectibles to find. The different objectives almost fall into that repetitive trap, but I think they're different enough to keep you pretty engaged. They feel pretty similar to the different objectives in SA2 stages. Usually one requires you to find a bunch of crystal shards scattered around an open area of the level, some having you play through a short remixed version of the level design, usually specifically made for a certain character in mind. Some of them are just like speed-based, like reach the end of the stage within a time limit, or reach these checkpoints before the time runs out. This is definitely just a way to pad out the game, similar to what I was complaining about with other 3D Sonic games, but I don't know, this feels like a way more natural and satisfying way to go about it. You're not engaging with an entirely different game genre suddenly. The pacing isn't suffering, and most importantly, the padding isn't entirely mandatory. The game requires you to do some of the alternate objectives, but it's sort of like collecting stars in Mario 64. You can choose to engage with the ones you want to engage with. If you really don't want to just run through the stage again under a time limit, you can just skip those and beat the game perfectly fine. This is a huge difference when comparing the other 3D Sonic games. There is this air of confidence in the game design when they give you the freedom to engage with the padding like this. The game doesn't mind if the player doesn't engage with most of it, and is totally satisfied being a 3-hour-long 3D Sonic game experience. And I love that. The game also controls surprisingly well. Considering this is an iPad game and probably made with touchscreen controls in mind, you have a lot of control with your character, and the speed feels like the devs just did some Goldilocks shit to get it, like, just right. Due to it being made for an iPad, I kinda thought this would be the game's Achilles heel, but it was surprisingly satisfying to play. That being said, I did end up using an Xbox controller to play the game though, but I have heard the touchscreen controls are pretty good. I don't know if I 100% believe that, but sure, maybe. I don't know if I like the movement as much as SA1 or SA2, but it's leagues better than any other 3D Sonic game post SA2. Oh shit, should I have said that? Sonic fans already want to rip me a new one for my Sonic Heroes opinions. I'm probably playing with fire with that comment, huh? But I don't care. I really was impressed at how confidently good this game was. It didn't feel like it was fumbling or struggling with its mechanics. It didn't feel like the classic 3D Sonic in the right direction step. It feels more or less exactly what I've always wanted in a 3D Sonic engine. But that also being said, the game is not even close to perfect. I think the biggest reoccurring issue plaguing this game is it was made for Apple Arcade. Everything about this game feels like it was designed and trying to cater to an iPad child. For one, the game is insanely simple. While the movement is good, your moveset is extremely limited. You can jump and boost. That's pretty much it. You may think that simplicity could lead to clever level design, really expecting the player to hone their skills with these specific mechanics. But no. The level design is painfully simple too, hardly posing any kind of challenge at all. The homing attack is so insanely generous. Like if you miss a jump, you can just sort of mash the homing attack button and will probably still hit some kind of spring or enemy 200 yards away. It really never felt as if I was using my reflexes and brain to play this game. It was just kind of running through the motions. And the same goes for the bosses. They are the most TV static, brainless bosses I've seen designed in a while. Sadly, all these things made the game feel super forgettable as a whole, which is a shame for me personally. I honestly do think this simplicity could be a positive to some. It's kind of like a popcorn game. You only really need to be like 50% attentive, and you can have a decent amount of fun running through these levels. But my body craves for a more substantial 3D Sonic game, especially when it feels this good to play. I've wanted something that feels like this from mainline Sega for literally decades now. To finally get it, but it's held back like this, really does suck. I haven't really touched on the story, but that's kinda because it's a whole lot of nothing. They introduce a new character, Arium, and she's nothing. She's a totally nothing character. Something about them getting trapped in a virtual dream world or something, I don't know. The main takeaway for me was that the voice acting was kind of all over the place. Sonic and Tails sounded good, but man, Rouge and Cream sound not good in my opinion. I won't even blame the voice actors themselves, it's just the direction does not fit these two at all. Cream particularly upsets me. I really loved her old voice direction. The shy and meek voice was so charming for a character in such a fast-paced and bombastic game. Now she just kinda sounds like a money-desperate VTuber trying to be as cute as possible in our debut stream.
Oh, thank you, Miss R.E.M. And thank you too for all your hard work.
We do get her making this weird little noise, and it's really, really funny.
We need to be strong too so we can help her, okay?
Oh yeah, and visually the game looks pretty good. Level themes and environments are really colorful and cute. Nothing like groundbreakingly cool, but definitely more original than something like Sonic Frontiers or Superstars. But those are pretty low bars, to be fair. Also, it's hard to tell, but I think the models used are slightly different than the usual Sonic models they use, which is really refreshing. I feel like we've been staring at the same model of Sonic since like 2008. These new models also animate really well too, a lot of really good expression. Anyways, yeah, the main issues I have with this game all kind of feel like they stem from it being made for Apple Arcade in general. It feels like a big part of the design of this game was making sure they were catering to the drooling kitty with their mommy's iPad in the back of the cart at Walmart, which on some level is fine, and I'm glad it was made at all. but it being distributed like an iPad game for drooling idiots is where I draw the line. Like I said before, this is exclusive for Apple Arcade for the foreseeable future. And with how the game is designed, I can tell this was always their plan. But being exclusive to a subscription service goes so against my morals as a video game enjoyer. One of my biggest pet peeves with digital media is DRM, and your right to own that said media you purchased. The idea that companies can legally take the things you pay for away from you, honestly away from everyone at once, whenever they want, is ridiculous to me. I see games, even like Sonic Dream Team, as a piece of art to be experienced by people. That piece of art's freedom being dictated by some big conglomerate's bottom line is really gross. So games being exclusive to services like Apple Arcade and Xbox Game Pass feels dystopian to me. There is no excuse for this game being exclusive to Apple Arcade besides a big corporation trying to push the narrative that it's okay that you don't own your games. These pieces of art are just fun little distractions, and that's it. It doesn't want to be more, and it doesn't expect you to want it to be more. It doesn't want you to want it to be more, because one day Apple will remove it from their service, and you'll never be able to play it again, and they don't want you to care. Which kinda makes me sick, I'm not gonna lie. I think the fact that this game feels like such a nothing experience, something that sort of just runs its course and leaves for you to forget about it, is exactly what they wanted. And that is such a shame with a game like this. It deserves better, in my opinion. I enjoyed a lot about it, but I could never knock the feeling I was playing an iPad game, you know? It never quite leaves that territory in my brain. People seem to roll their eyes at my disdain for mobile games and what they mean for the industry, but I genuinely feel this game is a good example of my feelings towards this. It's a game with so much going for it, basically a perfect recipe for my favorite 3D Sonic experience. Literally, Cream the Rabbit is like a main character. It's screaming, "Dawn will enjoy this." But the design choices made specifically to cater to Apple Arcade subscribers completely killed it for me. And like I've probably said 10 times by this point, this probably won't be the case for everyone. I know plenty of people who enjoy mobile games and how they are designed, and that's totally fine. More power to you if you enjoy like Genshin Impact or something. Maybe a dev can make something that caters to both mobile game fans and non-mobile game players. I just don't think Sonic Dream Team was that. I think maybe not making it exclusive to a subscription service specifically made for Apple devices would have been a good start. Even if we never see this game ported to other platforms, I do hope we see another Sonic game in this style, or at least in this engine. This is hard for me to recommend because I don't think any game is worth buying into an Apple device just to play, but I honestly wouldn't even recommend it if it was on like Switch or something. It's just not really a fully realized experience, but God, it's so close to being one. If you just so happen to have a significant other that has an iPad, and coincidentally they also have Apple Arcade as well, sure, by all means try it, maybe it's worth your time. Hopefully this was interesting or insightful for those poor people without Apple devices to play this. If you have played it, feel free to let me know what you thought of it. Now to try to get this video made in a few days before I go on vacation to Japan. Wish me luck. See ya, friends.